So this question about distress and efficiency has been really interesting me for quite a few years, and John Nicol as well. So finally, there was a HTA call by the NHR for efficient study designs, and we thought, well, we've got something we think might be a bit more efficient, but we don't know. So on the back of somebody else's trial, we added in what was called a methodological bolt-on study. So this was a trial that went to the HTA for funding, and they were asking for methodological bolt-ons. So we were the methodological bolt-on, and we called it the informed consent trial. So a randomized controlled trial of the efficiency and acceptability, and that could include a whole load of qualitative stuff as well, of two different informed consent pathways for effectiveness trials with usual care comparators. So we put this in. So let me just describe it a little bit more in detail, and then I'll tell you what happened to... Oh, what happened there? There we are, yeah. So the aim was to compare the efficiency, etc. So the objective, we called it standard informed consent, so telling everybody up front, etc. And then the tailored disclosure, I think the patient-centered, there's loads of different ways, relevant, adequate, whatever. But the alternative approach to informed consent that we've been talking about. And we decided to measure efficiency by actually comparing numbers analysed to the numbers approached, numbers analysed to the numbers randomised, numbers analysed to numbers that allocated the intervention, numbers who comply, who accept their allocation. So basically, you know those consort diagrams with all those numbers? So the idea is we would approach a large population and we'd randomise people to either be approached to have the standard approach to being in a randomised controlled trial, a pragmatic randomised controlled trial with treatment as usual or the comparator, or they would be randomised to a Twix approach. So, hey, do you want to come into a cohort with this condition, and then da-da-da. And we just look at all the numbers, we'd look at all the time it took, we'd look at the cost of everything, and then we'd look at the quality of the people recruited in terms of their representativeness of the target population to whom we're actually wanting to generalise the results to at the end. So we really enjoyed designing this actually, and yeah, we were going to piggyback it on one particular trial. So I can't remember. I composed these really. That's the next one. So I'll tell you what happened. So the proposal went into the HTA board. The HTA reviewers really liked the methodological bolt-on study, but the methodological research was actually going to be funded by the methods research panel, the MRP panel, and they tore it to shreds. They said it was too expensive, which I think it probably was. But so that was they had two main criticisms. The second one was, wait for it, they thought it wouldn't be approved by an ethics committee. So it was bounced out, and so they were prejudging what an ethics committee would say when there's actually historical precedent for Twix designs being, because it's actually a Twix design. The whole thing is a Twix design, because you wouldn't tell people, hey, you're actually in an alternative method of being recruited to a trial, because that would be meaningless. So yeah. So yes, I was deeply wounded by this for about 3 months, and then I thought, hey, come on, this is still a good idea. So when we were composing the program for this, I thought, okay, I'll come and bring it out again, and had a couple more discussions with my colleagues. And I think it was one of the reasons why I actually came and talked to Amanda and Clive at the HRA, was thinking, okay, well, ethics committees, you know, how would they approach this? Is there a way that we actually could send this back to the MRC, the methods panel, and say, actually, well, we know what the ethics committees are going to say, because we've gone and talked to them. And then the other thing we thought was, well, rather than piggyback it on one trial, which was actually, it was a trial of an intervention in the elderly, would the results from this particular methodological efficiency and acceptability study in an elderly population, would it be generalizable to a young population or adult mental health? You know, we thought, well, actually, maybe we need to do a sort of range of trials within trials, or trials of trial methodology. So So I guess a few months ago what my thinking was, and it's still evolving, was actually seeing if we could recruit, say, 5 or 10 clinical trials units in the UK who would say that the next time they get somebody coming, a researcher coming along with a pragmatic trial design, that they would offer a service where they would say, actually, well, we're going to do a methodological study alongside what you do. So this is your research question, this is your target population, but we're actually going to try 2 different ways of approaching and recruiting and informing and consenting people. All the inclusion and exclusion criteria will be exactly the same, the outcomes will be exactly the same, but who you tell what, when, would be different. And then we compare the efficiency and acceptability. So that was my sort of idea, that was my latest idea, was actually maybe 5 or 10 clinical trials units with maybe 5 or 10 studies over 5 or 10 years, maybe 5 years, where there'd be actually an efficiency and acceptability piece of research on the back of it. And if you did it, if you did all those at the same time, it would mean like a few meetings with people and setting things up. But once you've got the first one rolling. So that was my idea. So I guess I'm looking for people to shoot it down, refine it, or offer to collaborate, or directors of clinical trials units or recs who want to help. So.
But yeah, the comment, by the way, there's been lots of randomized trials on consent.
Yeah.
So I thought that's a really bizarre.
Yes.
I mean, they're all on knowledge, right? Do we do it this way? And the only endpoint they look at is knowledge, rather than an understanding, rather than sort of distress and participation so much. But I thought that's a bizarre comment.
Yeah, well, they said that initially, and we resubmitted it, and they still just said it again. I mean, we put very logical arguments in there, so but I think it's. If anyone's got any ideas, cute ideas on thoughts, comments.
My experience doing piggyback studies, which is what you're describing.
Well, I suppose it's parallel, isn't it? So it's the same research question, but looking at it from 2 perspectives.
I understand, but the PI of the study has to be comfortable with what you're doing with his trial, so to speak. So I was just going to suggest that developing a relationship beforehand when you hear of it, so that you go in it together rather than you approach them after they've had their study designed. I just find it I found it very difficult if they already have their set ways of thinking for you to add this great ethics piece on top of it. There's because they don't want to compromise their study.
I agree. So thank you, Scott. So one of the collaborators on this is David Torgerson, who's director of the clinical trials unit at York, and he's said to me on countless occasions he doesn't know which is the best way of providing informed consent. But what he tends to do is he tends to do the standard one because he knows that'll get funded. But genuinely, when you talk to him, he's openly admits he doesn't know which is the best approach. And that's a director of a very successful, prolific clinical trials unit. And I think he's not the only one, because we don't have the evidence base for the research decisions that we make around informed consent.
The one thing I think that might be a problem here is, are you going to choose sites to randomise to standard tailored intervention, or are you going to use individual patients? Because you might then have 2 different methods of consenting within a site, which might be very confusing.
Yeah, I think it depends on the research question and the population, because basically you've got to create a cohort of people who would be eligible to be approached for either design and then randomise them. So I think it would depend very much on the context, but it would need thinking through quite a lot.
I quite like the idea, but I can't quite see how it would fit into the current framework of trying to get clinical trial funded.
Yeah, I don't think it would cost that much more, actually. Basically, you'd need a body who would go around with the expertise at certain key points in the decision-making between the research and the clinical trials unit, and then the ethics committee meeting. And then we've got lots of examples now of how to do the information and consent for the Twix type designs.
So one final comment in the back.
So I was only going to say that not all trials units are the same.
Yes.
So York's I work in Leeds, I know York, and York as the trials unit don't do a huge number of drug studies. Yeah. They do interventional, it's not a quality drug, it's just true. Whereas in Leeds, their trials unit does hundreds of drug studies. They would run away screaming initially, I suspect. expect this because they used to work in that very tightly regulated, we control everything from start to finish. So I think it's a really interesting idea, and I think that's one of the things I'm really hearing today about what does consent look like. Finding the right trials units will be key.
Fundamental question, sorry if I missed this. The tailored pathway, that's a Twix pathway? Okay. I wonder if there would be an opportunity to find a traditional RCT and convert it to a Twix and see if the accrual numbers change dramatically.
Actually converting halfway through, or what?
Yeah, I suppose that he's running a trial of some behavioral intervention with a conventional recruitment approach. And there's an existing Twix cohorts, one of the ones that's already been built.
Okay.
And you could start recruiting for that trial within the Twix cohort. And you could compare how the accrual statistics change once you do that.
That's a nice idea.
That is actually what we are going to do in the Netherlands.
Okay.
We were approached by a trial in colorectal cancer patients. It was an adjuvant chemotherapy, and it was in a classic RCT where it was just not working. So they approached us, knowing that we have this cohorts, and well, we're going to see. I mean, it's only.
So you're doing it. You're doing it. Brilliant.
Going to do it.
Brilliant.
See what it's going to be.
Okay. Well, if you're interested in having a look at how we were thinking of doing the evaluation, then I can bang it over to you. So.
Find a multi-site trial and randomize a multi-site trial which is failing to meet its recruitment and randomize the sites to.
The thing you'd have to deal with in that is that generally when you have a trial that's designed for a particular purpose, the case report forms out of control because everyone's pitched in at the design stage, and so there's tons of prompts, not just the sort of the core sort of outcomes that you'll have on a lightweight in terms of burn kind of cohort. So it'll mean sort of ditching lots of problems, which ethically is fine. And this case is usually fine about losing sort of procedures, not adding them. But it might upset some of the scientists, and they might be people who say, oh, well, we don't want to lose all those problems.
So there's some really great ideas there. Okay, I've got three more ideas, but I'll whiz through them because we've got the panel coming up. So the next one I just mentioned in the introduction was I would love to get a group together to apply for some funding to actually introduce an extension to the consort statement that actually reports informed consent for trials. So who says what to when? Using the methods used for the extension, the consort extension for pragmatic trials, I think they've done fantastic work. They've moved things forward. That's fantastic. So that is just woefully, there's a big space here that needs to be filled with who told what when. So there's an example. So if anybody's interested in collaborating with me on that, then please come forward.
Just a little flag, right? The consort is everything's very simplified down, right? And it's you just must say something about this one issue. And I think a lot of things in the consent, certainly like psychological trials or behavioural trials, exactly what words you say are really, really critical.
Yes.
And so the most you're going to be able to do is, were patients told to what they were going to be random. It's very difficult how you could have 3 or 4 things that are going to be simplified.
I think it's doable.
down.
I think it's doable.
Yeah.
I've got some drafts that I can.
What I'm saying is that having sat on this, I did sat on tripod, and everyone wanted this very specific thing that would answer their methodologic question, and they were like, "No, that's not what we do. We answer these very, I was, let's do decision analysis, and they're like, if whatever technique you use, describe it, right? Was what ended up at.
Okay. So just briefly, another proposal is. So we put in a bid to EDAG, the Early Diagnosis and Advisory Group, which is sort of part of Cancer Research UK, and the idea was they wanted to do some work around evaluating the cancer awareness campaigns in the UK, which at the moment just use some street surveys and then prescribing data and GP visits, so it's very far from actually what they're wanting to measure. Which is actually impact on the incidence of cancer and cancer awareness. So we said, okay, well, we've got our Yorkshire Health Study with 30-odd thousand people in, but there's a lot of other cohorts and registries in the UK that if we actually join them all together, we could actually do a really good UK evaluation of the cancer awareness campaigns. But because at the moment the cancer awareness campaigns come out and they're just, well, let's do it here for 3 months, let's do it there for 6 months. There's no clear plan. So we didn't actually get that funding bid, but the Population Research Committee really liked the Twix idea. So they're very keen and they're courting us to actually put back a bid that actually will fit their call and go for a 3 to 5 year programme. So if anybody's interested in looking at Twix and cancer and putting in a bid to Cancer Research UK, again, you know where I am. And then the last one is I know that the Global Challenges Research Fund, which is a stupid number of £1 billion coming out of the UK for a budget, I believe, that there is going to be a call around methodology for research in low to middle income countries. So that may be a possible opportunity. So those were the 4 things I just wanted to mention. So again, if anybody's interested, let me know.